Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Bhojraj from the Spine Foundation, and I'm very happy to be here amongst all of you talking about a very interesting topic, which is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita for a busy physician. Actually, although it mentions that for the physician, it is also relevant and a huge learning experience for all types of professionals, and of course the healers. And healers could mean any type of healing, mental, physical, spiritual. So it's actually a talk meant for all of you. I am actually not a book person or a regular reader, neither a Sanskrit scholar, neither spiritual nor religious in any sense. But being a Hindu and the Bhagavad Gita being apparently the most relevant Hindu scripture, I always felt a constant urge to understand its relevance to my personal life and my pursuits. Hence, I decided to send a questionnaire about the thoughts on the subject to my very close friends, family members, and senior colleagues and mentors who were spiritually inclined, according to me. But to my surprise, 60% of them had not read or found the need to read the Bhagavad Gita. 10% of them had read but were confused by its message and its relevance. The next 10% had read but distinctly disagreed with its message. So we were left with only 20% of the people whom I had sent who found it relevant in today's context and were very much willing to discuss with me personally about the subject. I also went briefly through all the books related to the Gita, which I had bought myself compulsively, but never fully read them for want of time and lack of motivation. The Gita comes in three basic forms. Sage Vyas was the one who studied the Vedas and distilled it into the Upanishads, and also is credited with writing the Mahabharata and the part of it in which the Lord Krishna advises to the warrior Arjuna, which forms the Bhagavad Gita. The original Sanskrit scriptures descending from Vedas and Upanishads are the original ones. Eventually, we have the second form of Bhagavad Gita, which is its translations by different authors in multiple languages. And finally, we have the commentaries and interpretations by different renowned scholars and authors and leaders. Let's now look at some important facts and learnings from Gita, which I felt were relevant to us as professionals and healers. The most important thing in Bhagavad Gita is the stress on stress, self-doubt, and pessimism, which are universal and push one into a vicious cycle of negative thoughts, preventing clear objective analysis and the due exercise of one's intellect. If it can happen to Arjuna, the best of the warriors, it can happen to any one of us. So, Gita is not merely limited to Arjuna or on the war front. It applies by extension to all of us, as I said in the beginning, and to day-to-day situations of stress that we all face in daily life. Hence, it's extremely relevant to all of us. One of the main things in the Gita is the concept of actions. Yes, action is absolutely essential and highly recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna teaches that inaction is not only unnatural but also detrimental, arguing that one cannot even maintain their body without action. The Gita hence advocates for a specific type of action known as Karma Yoga, performing your duty without attachment to the results. Krishna explains, no one can remain inactive even for a moment, as everyone is driven to act by the qualities born of natural nature. Simply renouncing work does not liberate a person, instead it leads to delusion. Hence, karma or action and consequence is action, work or deed encompassing physical, mental and verbal acts and the reactions they produce, called as karma phala. But pure karma can bind you to the cycle of rebirth if done with attachment to the fruits. So working for money, seeking fame, or even eating to satisfy hunger are all simple karmas. And it could give rise to a cycle where you get locked in rebirth. The two terms which are very interesting in the rebirth concept are moksha, which is in Hinduism, Jainism and Sikhism, and nirvana in Buddhism. Both mean liberation from samsara, or it is cycle of rebirth and suffering, but differ in the ultimate aim, such as moksha often involves realizing the soul's oneness and Brahman or the absolute, or merging or union, whereas nirvana means to blow out desire, achieving a state beyond suffering and self. Hence, if you want to avoid the cycle of rebirth, you have to move to the next concept of action, which is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is the path of selfless action, the path of selfless work or service, performing duties without attachment to the outcome, for the sake of divine or greater good. It helps in purifying the mind, gains inner peace, and finds spiritual freedom through action itself, not its results. A soldier fighting for their country without personal ambition, or a devotee serving the God through their daily work. The last concept of action is Kriya, which means Kriya often refers to the ritual action or a specific energetic technique for inner transformation, particular in Kriya Yoga or union through action. It involves controlling vital energies such as pranayama through disciplined breathing and meditation, purifying the body and mind, and going beyond ordinary action. So the goal is to still the mind's fluctuations and achieve direct union with the infinite. So action is karma, which could get you into rebirth cycle, karma yoga, which is the path of selfless action, and kriya, which is for your own individual personal benefit. The next important term after action is that of duty, also called as dharma. Dharma is a universal law, righteousness or cosmic order, while the very important term, especially in Karma Yoga, is Svadharma. Svadharma is your personal individual duty or unique path you choose, and that depends on your nature, skills, your family background, your life stage, falling within the broader scope of dharma. Dharma is what, and Swadharma is how and for whom. Following your Swadharma leads to inner harmony, even if it seems imperfect, whereas following another person's path is Paradharma, is considered dangerous. So we have three terms of duty: dharma, which is the general guidelines of actions; Swadharma is what you believe in, what you feel is the purpose of your life; and Paradharma is something we have to stay away from because it is the dharma of someone else which may not match with yours. The next important term in Bhagavad Gita is Gyan Yoga. Once we know what is Karma Yoga and what is Dharma and Swadharma, it becomes important for yourself, for an individual, to know the purpose of life, your purpose of life. And we have multiple books in the literature as to how to find the true purpose of life. For that, you need intense learning, which is called as Gyan Yoga, which is learning to study what your purpose is. The next, after Gyan Yoga and Karma Yoga, comes the final yoga, which is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means devotion. After you have found your purpose, your Karma Yoga, and you have found that after proper Gyan Yoga, you need to be attached to it with full devotion and bhakti. That is called Bhakti Yoga. It does not mean praying or devoting. It means total, unhindered, complete devotion to the purpose or Svadharma you have chosen. It could be even in your own profession, as you can see here, some of the doctors dedicating with full bhakti to their duties or Karma Yoga or Svadharma. Now, after we have studied actions, Karma Yoga, duties or Svadharma, and the different yogas such as Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, we should be also aware of all the obstructions to the actions we plan to do after Gyan Yoga. So these are the 5 top problems which could obstruct you in this game of snakes and ladders. Or you could get trapped, as you can see in this picture, with these 5 obstructions. First one is fear of failure. Second is not found a true purpose, so not done your Gyan Yoga properly. Then desires, greed always obstruct your path, and you have to stay away from desires of multiple forms and greed of anything more than the need. And finally, a very important aspect in Bhagavad Gita is to stay away from ego. Ego is different from self-esteem. Ego is often the insecure false self, focused on being right, needing external validation and superiority. For example, I am better than you. While on the other hand, a healthy self-esteem is quiet confidence, self-acceptance and intrinsic worth, allowing one to learn, respect others and handle flaws without collapsing. Ego stems from fear and insecurity, leading to defensiveness, whereas self-esteem on the other hand comes from self-worth, competence, fostering genuine connection and growth. So self-esteem is very healthy, self-worth, driven by inner confidence, self-acceptance and sense of worth. In essence, a big ego often masks low self-esteem, whereas a high self-esteem doesn't need an ego to function because it's already secure in its own value. A very important term in the Bhagavad Gita is Sthita Prajna, which actually means steadfast wisdom or stoicism. Sthita Prajna is all about emotional balance, remaining calm in crisis, being unaffected in praise as well as criticism, and it's a firm control of fear, ego and greed. Acharya Vinoba Bhave, in his wonderful book for the commoner called as Talks on the Gita, amplifies this concept of Sthita Prajna, and actually he has written a separate book only on this concept of Sthita Prajna. He aimed to make the Gita understandable for the ordinary people, focusing on its practical, spiritual and moral lessons rather than scholarly debates on the text or history. Mahatma Gandhi ji has written extensively about Gita, and sometimes I wondered, someone who believes in ahimsa, why has he chosen Bhagavad Gita, which was written on the battlefield? But the Mahabharata he compares with an internal warfare, which is the battle between the good and the evil within your mind. He also compared Sthita Prajna with the ahimsa policy of non-violence which he chose and propagated. And the last is the ultimate purpose of Satya, or the truth, which became his Svadharma, as you know from his Satyagraha. The next person who extensively used and learned from the lessons of the Gita was Swami Vivekananda. He took Bhagavad Gita as a lifelong companion. He carried it everywhere, even as a wandering monk, turning it into solace and inspiration. He taught that true happiness comes from within and that the Gita's path involves selfless work or karma yoga and detaching from the fruits of actions, which cures the disease of attachments. This is a very interesting book by Devdutt Patnaik. He writes extensively on mythology, and it's an entire book. We could be here the whole day studying each page of his book. But I've just chosen one line when he says Gita, spelt oppositely, is Tagi, which means Tyag. So one who lets go. So this is a beautiful line in the entire book which I chose to talk about. So letting go means detachment from all the attachments, including greed, desires, and ego. I'm not sure whether you've heard of the world-renowned plastic surgeon Dr. Arvind Thakte. He's one of my role models and mentor. I spend time with him whenever I can. And he has studied and written extensively on the Bhagavad Gita. He has been honored by the Royal College of Plastic Surgeons from UK. Until today, just last week, he takes lectures on the Gita. He has studied the Jnaneshwari, which is Sant Jnaneshwar's interpretation of the Gita. And after years of study, he recently, just a year ago, wrote a new book called as The Gita Revisited, where he feels the Gita is not just a religious work. It covers topics such as philosophy, physics, psychology, social contract, nature, history, tradition, belief, reason, and religion. So you can see that even today, at his age of nearing 80, he still finds Gita as a huge learning experience and spends a lot of time in re-exploring it and revisiting it. One of my most famous authors is Osho, Rajneesh, and I am enamored by his books. And one of the books, or many of the books which decorate my shelf, are his two books on the Gita. One is Gita Darshan, and second is The Man and His Philosophy, Lord Krishna. Osho, in essence, saw the Gita as a guide to understanding and transcending the mind's conflicts to achieve spiritual awakening, a practical philosophical journey from the fragmented self to the unified aware individual. Osho saw the Gita as a manual for the mind, science of psychology, Manovigyan, highlighting Krishna's role as the first psychoanalyst understanding Arjuna's inner turmoil. He argued scriptures themselves aren't spiritual. Spirituality begins where the mind ends, but the Gita provides a crucial psychological foundation. Osho made the Gita's teachings accessible to all, connecting Arjuna's battlefield dilemmas to contemporary struggles of self-realization. The ultimate goal, according to Osho, is to become a silent, pure consciousness, the witness to the mind and body, a concept echoed in his reverence for the Ashtavikara, Gita as a path to direct realization. Coming to myself, after going through all these scriptures and translations and worldviews and mentors and the feedbacks I got, I tried to analyze how Gita has affected me. I joined KEM Hospital and the GS Medical College as a medical student and remained there for almost 18 years, letting go or getting attached to all the worldly pleasures when my classmates had already become consultants and private practitioners. I continued to serve at the KEM Hospital for 18 long years, starting with 1988, establishing the first spine unit. So that I felt subconsciously I was following the Tyagi concept of remaining away from the obstructions. I failed in MS examination due to some controversial decisions, but it did not deter me from following what I had chosen as the purpose of life, and that somewhere reflected the Sthita Prajna status. The Gyan Yoga was demonstrated by the overseas spine training I did personally to start the first spine unit at the 𝐄𝐬𝐬𝐲 hospital in 1988. And for that, I had to travel abroad to gain Gyan by spine training at international centers. This Gyan Yoga continues till today in the Spine Foundation Fellowship Group training program, where we have close to 40 to 50 fellows who have now become, after intensive training, spine surgeons attached to the Spine Foundation. So Svadharma, Seva and Karma Yoga is amply demonstrated in community outreach and service through the Spine Foundation. Coming to the private practice group in which we are involved as consultants, I think Karma Yoga is not only karma or kriya, but Karma Yoga. And it also, the Gita also helps us in dealing with the unhappy patients because of the various lessons it gives. Ego boosting versus self-esteem is extremely important in private practice, when happy patients tend to boost your ego, but you have to be at the grassroots level, and detachment and steadfast wisdom comes to our rescue. The Spine Foundation, which was initiated in 1998, almost 28 years ago, follows the Bhagavad Gita subconsciously in all its aspects. The Bhagavad Gita strongly recommends selfless service to others, framing it as essential for spiritual growth, purification and attaining the supreme goal, emphasizing nishkama karma, action without attachment to results, and working for the welfare of all beings as form of devotion or bhakti. It teaches that giving freely, wisely and without expecting rewards purifies the heart and aligns one with divine will, contrasting it with selfish indulgence. So service to humanity is service to God. Working for the welfare of all living beings is a direct way to serve God and achieve spiritual realization. So the take-home message from this talk would be Gyan Yoga to find Svadharma or purpose of life for you as an individual. Karma Yoga is action different from karma as well as kriya. So it's a selfless action. Bhakti Yoga is full commitment to what you have chosen as your path and duty. Gyan Yoga comes again because after doing Gyan, Karma and Bhakti, the outcome, although you're not attached to the outcome, you have to learn from the learnings it has given from the outcomes, both good and bad results. So do not get enamored by the good results, do not get depressed by the bad results, but learn from them. So Gyan Yoga comes once again. And the final statement is let go or detach or being Sthita Prajna without expectation of fruits of your action.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharat abhyuthana dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
The weight of responsibility. Every day we prepare for action. We train our hands, we sharpen our skills, we perfect technique. But very little prepares us for the mental and emotional weight that comes before action. In professions where decisions carry consequence, clarity is not optional. It is essential. Not a war, but a moment. A warrior stands ready, capable, trained, responsible, yet momentarily overwhelmed by the gravity of what lies ahead. Wisdom does not begin by teaching how to fight. It begins by teaching how to stand steady before acting. Lesson 1. Action without obsession. You are responsible for your action, not entirely for the outcome. In medicine, outcomes depend on many forces: biology, timing, patient response, uncertainty. When the mind becomes obsessed with results, clarity suffers, judgment tightens, anxiety creeps in. But when attention is fully placed on the action itself, precision improves. Lesson 2. Emotional balance as a skill. The lesson describes equanimity as a form of mastery, not emotional detachment, not indifference, but steadiness in success and in failure. A balanced mind reduces errors, improves judgment, and sustains performance over time. Emotional regulation is not weakness, it is professional discipline. Lesson 3: Detachment sharpens precision. Detachment does not mean caring less. It means acting without fear, without ego, without being paralyzed by the need to control outcomes. A calm, unattached professional thinks more clearly than one driven by fear of failure or attachment to praise. Lesson 4: Medicine as responsibility. The lesson reminds us that some roles are more than careers. Healing is one of them. When medicine is seen only as work, fatigue feels heavier. When it is seen as responsibility and service, effort gains meaning and endurance becomes possible. This teaching does not ask us to withdraw from action. It asks us to act with clarity instead of chaos, discipline instead of exhaustion, compassion without collapse, calm, not indifferent, excellent, not ego-driven, disciplined, not rigid, because inner clarity is the foundation of outer precision.
So finally, I think it's all about being human in pursuit of excellence and fulfillment. Thank you for a patient hearing, and I'm sure this is going to enlighten you and open up different avenues and get total satisfaction in your life. Thank you.